Reality feels real because it repeats itself. The world behaves in familiar ways, day after day, reinforcing the impression of solidity. Objects remain where we left them. The body responds predictably to gravity and time, because it is the follow effect in a straight line. From this regularity, certainty emerges. We rarely question reality, not because we have proven it, but because it behaves consistently enough to stop our curiosity. Familiarity replaces investigation. Consistency is not proof of fundamentality. It is only repetition at a particular scale. When science extended perception beyond the limits of the human senses, this apparent solidity began to dissolve. The closer physics looked, the less stable reality became. Matter did not reveal smaller and smaller solid pieces beneath its surface. It revealed instability, indeterminacy, and probability. What we once thought of as the foundation of reality turned out to be more like a surface illusion produced by scale. Quantum level, particles do not behave like objects. They do not have fixed positions or defined properties independent of interaction. An electron is not a tiny sphere traveling through space along a clear path. It is a mathematical description of potential outcomes. Before measurement, it exists as a probability distribution, not here, not there, not fully defined anywhere. This is not metaphor. It is a result of repeated, carefully controlled experiments. Experiment does not simply reveal what is already there. It participates in bringing one possibility into actuality. Until interaction occurs, reality remains open. This challenge is one of the most deeply ingrained assumptions of human thought, that the world exists fully formed, independent of observation. Quantum physics does not suggest that the human mind creates reality, but it clearly shows that reality is not independent in the way we were taught to believe. Universe is at its most fundamental level. Behaves less like a finished structure and more like an unfolding process. Events are not predetermined with absolute certainty. Outcomes emerge through interaction. The language of classical physics objects, trajectories, fixed properties, becomes inadequate. Reality resists being reduced to solid things. Realization unsettles the mind because the mind seeks stability. It wants fixed ground, clear definitions, and reliable categories. The idea that reality itself is probabilistic threatens the sense of control. Yet the discomfort does not come from reality being uncertain. It comes from the mind's insistence on certainty where none exists. Inside, spiritual inquiry approaches the same territory without instruments or equations. Instead of looking outward at particles, it looks inward at experience itself. Everything you have ever known appears within awareness. Sensations arise. Thoughts arise. Emotions arise. Even the sense of identity arises. Each of these appears, changes, and disappears. Awareness itself is not a belief system. It is not a philosophy. It is a direct observation available in every moment. Experience happens. Awareness knows it. Awareness does not fluctuate with the content of experience. Whether the mind is calm or agitated, awareness remains unchanged. Particles arise from quantum fields. Experience arises within awareness. Forms appear. Forms dissolve. The field remains. Different traditions describe this in different languages, but the structure is the same. What is fundamental is not the form, but the space in which form appears. It feels real because it is reinforced by memory and language. We tell ourselves a continuous story about who we are. This story creates coherence. Coherence creates familiarity. Familiarity creates the impression of a solid self, but when examined closely, identity behaves like a process, not an entity. It is continuously updated by thought, sensation, and memory. It changes subtly from moment to moment. Awareness, however, does not behave like a process. It does not move through stages. It does not age. It does not accumulate experience. It simply knows experience as it appears. This distinction is often overlooked because awareness is so close, so constant, that it becomes invisible. We mistake the contents of experience for the one in which they appear. It reveals itself as less solid than it seems. In everyday life, time feels like a continuous flow, moving from past to future. The closer examination shows that the past exists only as memory arising now. The future exists only as imagination arising now. Experience itself never leaves the present moment. Reality is not moving through time. Time is appearing within experience. It echoes this insight in its own way. At fundamental levels, time loses its absolute status. In certain quantum models, time behaves more like an emergent property than a foundational one. What we experience as linear time may be a useful approximation, not a fundamental feature of reality. These insights from physics and inner observation are allowed to coexist. A subtle shift occurs. The need to explain reality weakens. The urge to control experience softens. Attention becomes clearer, less filtered by assumption. Reality is no longer approached as a problem to be solved, but as a process to be witnessed. Physics does not tell us what reality is. It tells us what reality is not. It is not solid in itself. It is not fully defined without interaction. It is not composed of independent parts, existing in isolation. Spiritual inquiry does not tell us what to believe. It tells us where to look. They remove certainty. And in the absence of certainty, something unexpected appears. Not confusion, not emptiness, but clarity. Not the clarity of answers, but the clarity of direct experience. When the mind stops insisting on fixed conclusions, perception opens. Stillness is often misunderstood as the absence of movement. In truth, stillness is the background that allows movement to be perceived. Sound arises within silence. Thought arises within awareness. Motion appears within stillness. Stillness is not opposed to activity. It is what makes activity visible. Stillness does not need to be created. It is already present. It does not arrive through effort or technique. It becomes obvious when unnecessary tension drops away. Beneath thought, beneath identity, beneath explanation, there is something quietly present. It does not comment. It does not judge. It does not seek improvement. Presence is not personal. It does not belong to an individual. Individual experience appears within it, but it is not confined by identity. Just as space is not owned by the objects within it, awareness is not owned by the experiences it contains. Realization of this does not remove you from life. It brings you closer to it. When experience is no longer filtered through rigid identity, perception becomes more immediate. Ordinary moments regain depth. Sound, light, and silence reveal themselves with renewed clarity. Certainty no longer feels like a problem to eliminate. It becomes a natural condition of existence. Quantum physics accepts uncertainty as fundamental. Inner observation reveals not knowing as a form of intelligence. Reality does not demand final answers. It invites attention. Then is not something hidden in the future or encoded in explanations. Meaning arises from presence itself. When awareness is clear, even simple experience carries depth. Nothing needs to be added. Nothing needs to be removed. Mind may continue to search for conclusions. That is its function. But awareness does not need conclusions to be complete. It is whole before thought begins and remains whole after thought ends. And the convergence of physics and inner inquiry does not lead to certainty. It leads to humility. Reality exceeds our models. Awareness exceeds our descriptions. What remains is not confusion, but quiet clarity. Final statement about reality. There is only continued observation, continued presence, continued openness. Beneath every attempt to understand, beneath every question about existence, there is something silently present, unmoving, unchanging, not separate from experience, yet untouched by it. It requires belief, it requires understanding. Ready here.